Welcome into the Fantasy Playmakers podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Poplars. You can find me on Twitter at PopesFFH. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Ryan Mackey, who you can find on Twitter at Mackey_FFB. How's it going, Ryan?
Not too bad, man. Just excited to get started with the NFC West here and got two great guests, so I'm just ready to get the show started, man.
Yeah, and as you're alluding to, we do have two guests tonight. We'll start off with the lesser of the known two. A new contributor to Yards Per is Dan Park. You can find him on Twitter at ParkFFB. How's it going, Dan?
It's going good, man. Just trying to beat this heat wave we got going here.
Right up here in Buffalo,
it's guy, you know.
Yeah, it's humid as can be up here in Buffalo, and I had to wear long pants and long shirt all day in a mechanic shop while working on large dump trucks. So you can, I think I lost about 5 pounds. So, but yeah, and then our last but not least guest is Chris Robin. You can find him on Twitter at Detroit Beastie. What is up, Chris?
Hey, thank you for having me. Yeah, on Twitter at Detroit Beastie. I'm very excited to be here because, as you know, you're live all the time. I feel like you're live sometimes 2-3 times a day. We're in a couple group chats together. We talk, in DMs here, and I always see your broadcast. And the old me, I used to reach out to everybody, right? And I feel kind of that's weird, right? Things that we used to do, we look back and we're embarrassed about it now. They always talk about shooting your shot. So I don't reach out to people and beg to be on their broadcast anymore, and I didn't have to do that. You came to me and I said absolutely. So just know I wanted to be on the broadcast for a while, but I didn't want to look foolish if you told me no or something silly.
I would never say no, for sure. But now I feel you, and that's the way I feel. I put it out there that I'll go on some, but I never want to be like overbearing and be like, "Yo, have me
exactly."
On. Please.
Yeah,
please.
I
don't want to be up somebody's butt to try and get on.
If you say no tomorrow, there's going to be 3 guys show up to your mechanic shop with bats and say, You know what, we got a situation here. You got to get Chris on there. So
yeah, that'd be rough. So, but before we dive into the NFC West here, real quick, Ryan, why don't you hit him with the King Sports promo?
Oh shoot, I actually forgot to put that in my notes today. So give me
God, Ryan.
That's my fault. I was distracted by Daniel's phone that I forgot all about.
Jeremy, if you don't mind, get just in one sentence describe King Sports to me, and I'll try and do one off the cuff. We'll see what we get.
All right, it's a draft guide.
Okay,
and we have a promo with them that you can save 10% off using the code Playmakers. So freelance it.
Sure. Well, King Sports, the broadcast this evening is brought to you by King Sports. It's a fantastic draft guide. If you use the promo code Yards Per, if I'm not mistaken, you get 10% off. Playmakers. If you use the promo code Playmakers, you get 10% off, and it's fantastic to begin with. In today's day and age, everybody's putting out a draft guide. Everybody's got their hands in something. This one sets itself apart because of their partnership with the broadcast here. So check out King Sports. You get 10% off if you use the promo code, Jeremy. Hit me with it.
Playmakers.
There it is. So King Sports, Playmakers, 10%.
All right, Ryan, you lost your job. We're going to just do an over with that, and Chris can take over. We'll just click the button.
Perfectly content with that. That was awesome.
All right, let's dive in here to the NFC West, guys, after we have some comments. But let's move in here to the Los Angeles Rams. I'm going to hit you guys with a question, and then I'm going to back out, so have fun. But let's start off here. Do we think Matt Stafford can finish as a top 12 quarterback? Let's start with Ryan, and then we'll go clockwise to Dan and then Chris. Ryan?
All right. So Sean McVay has already came out and said that he believes that Stafford is better than advertised. And I've always thought that he was kind of, no offense to Detroit Beastie here, but I've always thought he's been kind of wasting away in Detroit. Him and Megatron are two of the most wasted talents I've ever personally seen with my own 2 eyes, in my opinion. And because of that, he's hungry to succeed. They've never really been able to be successful in Detroit. But he's under the most pressure he's ever been under, as most Rams fans I've talked to. I have multiple friends that are Rams fans, and just reports that I've seen a lot of people believe that he was the missing piece for this team. So he's one of those guys that's just under a lot more pressure because, again, no offense to Detroit Beastie or Detroit or anything like that, but they just weren't really expected to do a whole lot in Detroit. And he's one of those guys that just he puts up a lot of yards, but he's just never been able to do anything outside of that. But from weeks 7 through 13 last year, which was his best stretch of the season, he was QB 11, and he's in a much better, more creative offense now. McVay's going to use his arm as often as he can. He's going to take a lot more effective shots downfield than what Goff was doing last year. According to PFF, over the last 2 years, Stafford has a 93 passing grade with just over 1,900 yards, 13 touchdowns, 6 picks, and a 98.1 QB rating on throws 20-plus yards downfield. And despite the Rams having the number 1 defense last year, Goff actually had more attempts than Stafford, and Goff led the league in 19 with an average Rams defense. So I expect Stafford to be more aggressive, more efficient, and an overall better quarterback than Goff this season. And a QB finish is a possibility, but I think he falls in that 13 to 15, 16 range personally, just because there's guys ahead of him that have more upside with their legs, and they also have a RB1 that we'll talk about here shortly.
Well, Dan?
I think he could easily be top 10. He has great receivers in Kupp and Woods. He's got a pretty good tight end with Higbee, and he's got, like Ryan said, an RB1 that we'll talk about later. But I could fully see him throwing for over 5,000 yards this year with the 17th game being added. I'm all in on Stafford this year for sure.
All right, Chris?
Yeah, I'm all in on Stafford again, right? And I know Ryan referred to me a few times. Sorry to say this, Detroit Beastie, and it's no offense. Everything you said, I agree with. Here, as a lifelong Lions fan, I'm in my mid-30s, born and raised on the east side of Detroit. It's just the whole Honolulu blue and silver is just ingrained in my blood. And there's one thing that nobody really touched on in terms of rankings and where he can finish and the weapons he has. Stafford has that one intangible that no one ever mentions. The dude is a gamer. He'll be on the field, rain, sleet, or shine. Dislocated elbow, knee hanging off the bone. He don't care. He's going to be on the field. That's what he loves to do, and he gives his all. He gives 100%. And there's a couple quarterbacks. Actually, there's a couple, professional athletes in general that you can't say that about. They pull up lame, or they just don't want to play, or they just worried about dancing and spreading nonsense on social media, i.e. Juju or Eric Ebron, just so happened to be in Pittsburgh here. But when it comes to Matthew Stafford, that's what he does. He digs into a playbook, and he gives his all to his team, the city he's in, and everybody else around him. So do I think that Matthew Stafford could finish as the question, top 12, top 15? Absolutely. I have him for again, at this point, it's not really sneaky to say we think Matthew Stafford can be a top 10 quarterback, but I'm with Dan too in a way where I could see him throwing for 5,000 yards as it stands now in my projections. And I feel bad for this, but I published my top 250 about a month ago, and I feel bad because I haven't really updated it, but it is what it is. Look for update this week. I have Stafford around 15 or 16 right now, around Justin Fields, Ryan Tannehill here, and I expect him to firmly be in the top 10 at the end of the season here. And some projections for you. I have him for almost 4,600 passing yards, 25 to 28 touchdowns, 25 to 28 touchdowns. So you're looking at an improved overall kind of quarterback in terms of numbers and everything that he'll give you there. So give me all the Stafford I can handle. And in 2 quarterback leagues, again, the secret is out on Stafford. It's never really been a secret, but especially this season, everybody wants Matthew Stafford. So if you want to draft Stafford in your fantasy leagues, you might have to reach just a little bit, but I have no harm there given the output that I expect from Stafford.
I think we got 3 unanimous yeses there by what I can take. So let's move on to the running backs, guys. We're going to go in reverse order here. We'll start with Chris. So Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson. Do we get a split backfield, or can we expect one of these guys, a la Cam Akers, take over?
Absolutely. There is absolutely no way there will be a split backfield. If we've learned anything from last season, that this offense and Sean McVay are absolutely head over heels in love with Cam Akers. Now, I know what you're thinking. What was it? Just off the top of my head, there were weeks 7 through 10, maybe. Cam Akers he literally did not see the field. And then boom, all of a sudden in weeks 10 or 12 through the end of the season, this guy was getting ridiculous amounts of workload, 25 plus carries, in that 28 range. And he had 145 carries last season. That's okay because they didn't know. I said this, I should rewind. I've said this on numerous broadcasts last season that McVay, he played the long con with us, right? Cam Akers wasn't even, an afterthought. He was an afterthought. He wasn't being used. And then when our fantasy teams needed it the most, and when football needed it the most, they gave Cam Akers an ungodly amount of work. They conned us, right? We traded him. We cut him in some redraft leagues. It was insane. And then bam, we get what we got. But this coming season, I have Cam Akers for a healthy 250 plus carries, looking at 1,100 total rushing yards. You could probably add on about 400 receiving yards, 45, 50 touch or receptions there in this one. So there is in no way going to be a split backfield here. Hendy is going to be used just to spell him, as the football people say, just to give Cam Akers a breather, in certain situations. So I'm all in on Cam Akers in 2021.
I like it. I think too, just a quick tidbit before Dan can jump in, but I think the lack of him getting used early was just because he was so raw. I think you knew that coming out of Florida State. He was a raw, talented young running back, and
that was the biggest knock.
Yeah,
I remember hearing
that's what it was along. You know what I mean? They just let him sit, and McVay was fine with running with the tandem for a while, and then you saw it once it clicked for him. They were like, "All right, it's all Cam Akers."
And I'm glad you brought that up because I had forgotten about that. This time last year, that was the thing. On social media is a wild place, but that's all we heard about. Cam, you're worried you're drafting a guy who only had 33 carries in college and this and that, and it didn't add up to me. And look, here we are. A year later, here we are. Give me Cam Akers.
For sure. Dan, how about you on Cam Akers?
I like him, but at his current ADP, it's a little bit of a risk to take him, but with the upside that he shows, like the last 5 games of the season, the least amount of touches he had was 15, so I don't see how he couldn't be a bona fide RB1 in this offense. McVay seems to like him, and I don't see Henderson seeing the field very much at all. He'll be like a change of pace kind of guy, but it's Cam Akers all day.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I feel like from probably we could say running back 8 on, I mean, there's those 4 or 5 spots that are just wide open for a lot of these second-year guys. How about you, Ryan? Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson, what are we expecting?
So, yeah, I fully expect Akers to lead the backfield in touches after what he did at the end of the year last year. Over the final 4 regular season games, he averaged 22 carries and 3 targets a game, over a 60% snap share. And in the playoffs, he averaged 23 carries, 110 yards, and a touchdown per game, chipped in with a few catches as well. And the Rams showed down the stretch that he was their guy, and that should stay the same way. McVay said he sees Akers in every down back. And for the most part, I believe that. I know coach speak in the offseason is kind of whatever, but this one I believe. As for Henderson, I think he's still involved enough on a good enough offense to be flex viable. I think he touches that 8 to 10 range. And especially in a bye week situation, he can be useful, but he's obviously a must add in the event that Akers is banged up, because I think he is talented. I think Akers is just better. So in the event that Akers goes down for any reason, then Henderson is definitely a must add for any league that he's not already owned in.
For sure. I like it. So we got 3 pretty good firm yeses as well on Cam Akers.
Jeremy, let me just add in one little thing, if I may here, boys. And so I had what I say. I have Cam Akers for 250 plus easily, probably just over that. 255, 260 would be fantastic. And Henderson, in my projections, I don't even have Henderson seeing 100 total carries in this coming season. So that's very telling, once you crunch the numbers and you compare the two. So about 95 to 98 carries for Henderson and only 15 or 16 receptions here. So what this is telling me, this offense is going to go through Stafford and Cam Akers. Get in on the wide receivers. And I know we'll get to that. Not trying to bury the lead here, but I'm saying give me Cam Akers. And again, as Ryan said, it's risky to reach. I don't mind reaching for Cam Akers. We have to take the risk. You got to risk it to get the biscuit, as they say.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go on to those wide receivers you were alluding at. I think just a quick question. You guys can back it up with whatever you want, but We obviously have Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp as the top two options in this offense. Who finishes higher in PPR? We'll start with you, Ryan.
Oh, man. This was really hard for me because I do love the upside that both of these guys possess with Stafford coming in there. Woods just turned 29 in April, but I fully expect him to finish as a wide receiver 2 for the 4th straight year in PPR. He has one of the safest floors at the position, seeing at least 5 targets in 42 games over the last 3 years. Kupp should also have another wide receiver 2 season with wide receiver 1 upside. We saw in 2019 that he can be a wide receiver 1 in any format when he had 94 catches and a shade under 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns. I don't expect Kupp to get to double-digit touchdowns again, but another season of 90-plus catches, 1,000-plus yards, and 4 to 6 touchdowns is well within the range of possibilities for Kupp. So, I think Kupp probably finishes higher, but I think they're really, really close.
All right, Dan, how do you feel?
I have a kind of a hot take. I think Robert Woods has his first top 10 finish this year with Stafford at the quarterback position. He's consistent. He always gets catches. He has a really good floor, one of the best floors at the position, I think. And he has the rushing yards. They involve him in the rushing game a lot. And I think he's posed for a breakout, if you will, this year. I really like Woods. I'm taking him in almost every draft I'm in.
Yeah, his value at his ADP right now is crazy. Insane. I wrote about it just in that last article at Yards Per. It's crazy for a guy that's consistently top 15, like the last 3-4 years. So, all right, Chris, on to you. Who do you got?
While you guys were talking, I was listening, and it got the wheels turning in my head. But what's stopping us from saying that Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods can have almost identical seasons, right? And when I looked at my projections here, follow me. I'll make it quick. I have Robert Woods for about 94 receptions for about 1,100 yards. I have Cooper Kupp, same thing, 90 to 94 receptions for 1,100 yards. They both have 5 or 6 touchdowns here, both finishing with literally about 240 total PPR points here. So who's to say that they both can't finish with almost identical, if not the same stat lines this season? Same numbers of catches, same yardage within reason. I mean, I'd like to think if I made that claim and it came true, you'd give me like a margin of error of like 5 to 8 yards here, where as long as they were within that safe thing here, then it would be it. So given what they both can do with the Stafford offense and Cam Akers here, I love both of them. And I don't know if I can choose. And if you're going to make me choose here live on the air, I think I would go Cooper Kupp, because we've seen, I know this was Jared Goff, but the offense, with Stafford in and Cooper Kupp, Stafford in, Goff out, we've seen certain games where they just force fed the ball to Cooper Kupp. And I'm not saying Matthew Stafford is the same way, but he does get dialed in on one receiver from time to time. So to me, give me Cooper Kupp, but I'm talking like there's going to be a difference of five or less receptions, probably 15 or 20 yardage, and they're going to have the same touchdowns here. So give me both guys.
I like it. And I don't think that's hot. I think that's a good claim. I think their ADP kind of leads to that too right now. They're both going very similar. All right, let's reverse the wheel here again. We'll go through the tight end real quick. Just a quick question. Is it Tyler Higbee a one-man show, or is Jacob Harris kind of the camp wonder at the moment, going to kind of push him? Or are we just going to see kind of like the 12 personnel they've been running for the last 2 years with these two guys? Chris?
Well, I'm the wrong guy to ask about tight ends. I know there's certain groups of people, or there's certain, individual people on Twitter that are all about tight ends. And that's great. Not putting anybody down here, but I always fade tight ends, right? In DFS, I punt the position. And when I draft, I do that. Tight end is one of the last positions I draft. Tight end, they're just not for me. So when you look at the tight ends here, you're right. I would prefer Jacob Harris, because you get him for next to nothing. You can get him in the last pick of the draft. You can kind of stock up elsewhere. So give me Jacob Harris. And worst comes to worst, if I have to stream tight ends throughout the season, that's what I'll do. That's what I wind up doing anyway. So I'd like to take a massive shot on the rookie who looks fantastic. I don't know if you guys seen the most recent video. I think it was yesterday, of him catching that shot. It was just a dime in the back of the end zone, and the kid looks good, and it looks like they're willing to give him, everything that he can handle here. But again, the only thing that scares me is, do we see a situation with the same coaching staff like with Cam Akers? The first half of the season, he's just a ghost, and he's going to get cut. Nobody's going to pay attention to him, but that's fine with me. So give me Jacob Harris over Higbee, who was a massive letdown. Bryson Hopkins is another one I would consider, just as free, but there's a little bit of buzz around him, So I'd prefer Jacob Harris. Want nothing to do with Tyler Higbee.
All right, Dan.
I echo what he said. I'm just completely out on Higbee this year. He ruined me last year. I drafted him in a couple leagues, and it was just a nightmare. With the receivers getting the workload we think they're going to get, I don't see Higbee doing much of anything. So if I had to pick between the two, it would probably be the rookie Harris. For me, Higbee's just not it for me.
All right, Ryan. So can you go the Higbee side?
Higbee is the guy to own here.
We have a 2-1.
In terms of production, he's the guy to own. I mean, especially at least for this season, as Harris learns the ropes. Harris, he's a converted wide receiver, so he's learning the position. And Higbee's a veteran in this offense. He's already proven that he can be productive when he's targeted. Stafford threw to his tight ends on 22% of his passes, which would be roughly 130 targets if he throws 600 balls, which he's done 6 seasons. He's had at least 6 seasons of 590 attempts, or at least 590 attempts. So, granted, I don't expect to see that type of volume for Higbee, especially with the upgraded wide receiver that Stafford now has. But Higbee could see that 70, 80 targets, especially with Everett gone and Harris being still around the position. But I see him in that large group of guys that we've talked about multiple times that could finish anywhere from 9 to 16 or possibly even lower, just because it's such a large group of guys that are just kind of stuck in that position.
All right. So it seems like we're kind of all sort of out on Higbee or Harris, just aside from a dart throw late in drafts. So let's move on to the Seattle Seahawks. And our first question here, we'll start with Ryan. Is Russ going to cook, or are we simmering down here on Russ, and it's going to be a little bit more of a run game-based offense again? Ryan?
Well, Pete Carroll's already come out and said that the Seahawks have to run the ball more this upcoming season. He said it immediately after the playoff loss that they needed to do that. But then they go and hire Shane Waldron, who is a QB coach and a passing game coordinator in prior stops, and this is his first offensive coordinator job. But the reports are that he and Pete are looking to run a more balanced offense with a slight edge towards a run. And we've seen this tale of two halves for the last 2 years from Russ. He was a QB2 from weeks 1 through 9, but was QB16 from week 10 on. He had the highest completion percentage in the league last year on play action passes. And if they are looking to run the ball more, he should see success in that area again. He's going to finish as a QB1 because he's too talented not to. However, he's closer to QB12 than he is to QB5 for me.
All right, Dan?
I think the whole let Russ cook thing is relevant for about 8 games. And then the first 8 games, he comes out absolutely on fire. And then the last 8 games, it's like, okay, what are you doing here, bud? Like, we got to pick these numbers up. You're winning me my leagues the first 8 games, then the last 8, you kind of disappear. I think they should go to a more run-heavy approach. Carson is just an absolute beast back there, and I think they'd benefit a lot from running the ball a little bit more, but we don't know till we see it.
All right, and Chris?
I've always been big on, I'm sure we've all heard this term, the guy, a set it and forget it guy, right? Like a tight end is nice to do that with, or a DST if you're still doing that. Running backs, it's kind of lost with those. But Russ is a set it and forget it quarterback. The only time you're going to take him out of your roster or your starting lineup is a bye week, or God forbid he gets injured here. So I'm looking at nothing crazy, more of the same this coming season. Aside from the passing touchdowns, everything should be the same across the board. The completions, the attempts, the yardage, interceptions, maybe a little bit of a dip, which is good. Same thing with the carries, about 80 carries, 400 or 500 yards, 2-3 touchdowns there. So the only dip you're going to get is he threw for 40 touchdowns last season. I have him for about, 8 or 9 less. So let's give him 31 or 32 here. So if the question is he going to cook, or am I in or am I out on him? I'm in on Russ, but it's all relative based on how it happens in the draft. If I'm given a choice here between guy A and guy B, I'd think about it. He's not an automatic kind of smash draft given all the landscape of the current kind of DFS format with all the new rookies coming in with last year's crop. Are they going to kind of come up here? So Russ to me he's a guy, right? He's a quarterback that we can trust. He's a quarterback we can set and forget it. And then the rest, it is what it is. Again, I think Ryan touched on it. It's the kind of the same cycle with him, rinse and repeat, right? He has a great, first half of the season, first 8 or 10 games, everyone's chanting MVP, and then he just disappears and he just goes away. So to me, Russ is a good professional quarterback, and he's a damn good fantasy football quarterback. And so for that fact, I'm still in on Russ.
All right, 3 we're still ins.
Do you think he finishes as do you think he's more of the QB 16 we saw the last half, or more the QB 2, or do you think he finishes somewhere in the middle, like 9?
Yeah, I think I like what you said there. You think he's closer to 5 than 16 there. I'm the same way. I'm not going to give him quarterback 2. That's like extreme, but I'm not going to give him quarterback 16 either. That's extreme. In my rankings right now, it's perfect what you said. I have him right down the middle, split those 2 numbers. I have Russ at quarterback 7 right now, just below Lamar Jackson, just ahead of Joe Burrow.
I feel like that's a good spot. Like, I feel like that's kind of where I'd have him too. Like, I feel like he's just ahead of like those second year guys for me. And I mean, maybe not. Herbert's probably a little higher for a lot of people, but I feel like right around Joe Burrow and Lamar at this point, and then Trevor Lawrence, if he's up there for some people, like that's kind of like that area, that 9 to 10 range is kind of where I feel like he's going to sit into.
And here's the thing, I'm always open and honest, and I'll do it again here. At this moment in time, it's the end of June. We're on the cusp of July here. I play it safe this stage in the game. There's no reason to get too high or too low. You don't want to get manic with your rankings. You don't want to get manic with your projection. So you play it safe all summer. You tread water, you lay low, you don't want to burn out. So Russ at 7 right now is pretty safe. And then when the season is about to kick off, that's when you kind of go out on a limb on certain players. So right now, playing it safe, Russ at 7 is very safe right now.
I like it. Let's move on to, like we had alluded to, they got to get running the ball a little bit more. Ryan, let's start it off. Do we think Chris Carson's the workhorse? And if he's not, and they're going to go with a little bit more of a running back by committee, who is the RB2 there? Ryan?
So I think Carson's the workhorse. When he's healthy, he's seen 19 opportunities per game over the last 3 years, and Seattle just gave him that 2-year contract, which probably still have a lot of faith in him. He's been finished as a top 24 back in 74% of his games, and when he's healthy, he's a guy. And there's not much more to say other than that. I mean, he's had 760 touches since 2018. He started the year with 429 yards and 6 touchdowns over the first 5 weeks. Then he got injured against Arizona. After getting back healthy, he saw double-digit opportunities immediately and finished the year averaging 4.8 yards per carry and 7.8 yards per reception. If Seattle stays true to their word about running the ball more, and their offensive line can be even a little better, and like I said, if he stays healthy, he's locked into a high-end RB2 season. And for the guys that are worried about Russ cooking, like if you're in that camp that you think Russ is going to cook all year, and Carson was healthy for the first 5 weeks of the let Russ cook movement last year, and he averaged 20 fantasy points per game and was the RB5. And his 16-game pace for those 5 weeks was 262 touches, 1,373 yards from scrimmage, and 19 touchdowns.
So what you're saying is it benefits Carson to let him cook.
Yep.
All right. Dan, I think you alluded to it in our round there with Russ, but is Carson the workhorse, or do you think we got an RB by committee?
Oh, he's 100% the workhorse there. I think he's the most disrespected player in terms of ADP at the running back position. He goes in 3rd, 4th round almost. I've seen him go in. And when he's healthy and when he's getting the work, which is a workhorse load, he's just smashing. He's RB1 type numbers. And I don't get how he falls that far in drafts. I know that he gets injured, but to me, he's just an absolute beast.
Fair. I like it. Chris?
Yeah, the running back by committee. Who's the other portion of the committee? I mean, I love Travis Homer. I have had him on my team since he was like a senior in high school, and I love DJ Dallas. DJ Dallas was good to me last year in DFS formats when Chris Carson missed time. So those are the plays, but they're better suited for DFS formats, and that's okay. Sorry, I keep mentioning DFS. I'm just predisposed thinking that way. But when it comes to Chris Carson, he is what Ryan said about the new offensive coordinator, Shane, what's his last name? Waldron. That's what it is. Shane Waldron there. Yeah, Chris Carson is going to be fantastic. You're looking at 230, 240 carries here. The only thing we have to worry about is Carson will miss a game or two, and that's fine to be expected, but he's good to go. I don't know if anybody's seen that photo of him recently at camp, and he looked like he's, a Greek god chiseled out of granite there. The guy's ready to go, and he knows what he's supposed to do. He knows what's expected of him, and I'm drafting Chris Carson at anywhere that I can. And as you were talking, I looked at my rankings, and I had Chris Carson down in like RB 21. I had Travis Etienne, Josh Jacobs, and Miles Sanders ahead of him. And as you were speaking, I just moved him up to like RB 15 or 16, right around Joe Mixon, right around Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Very underrated RB2 here, and I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great steal right now at his ADP. I think he's got that high-end RB2 potential for sure. Let's go on to the wide receivers here. Obviously, you got DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Obviously, I'm just going to ask you guys, what can we expect from them this year? And then just a quick question, yes or no. Can Dwayne Eskridge be viable in this offense? Chris?
Ooh, well, when you get to, Dwayne Eskridge, I'll touch on him real quick. I like what I've seen, but I don't know if there's not a clear path to playing time because of like the big three, let's say, or the big four, Russ, Chris, DK, and Tyler Lockett. And to be honest with you, I don't like Tyler Lockett. And it's nothing to him personal, but we've seen, if you take what he did last year, he had like 2 or maybe 3 massive games, blow up games, right? Where he had 200 yards. He had 3 touchdowns in one game. I think he scored 3 touchdowns in 2 games this season, but you never know when you're going to get him. So those 3 blow up games worth all the nonsense when he puts up goose eggs or he puts up 8 or 9 points when you need it the most here? So to me, it's no question between the wide receivers, but that's me personally. Again, it's nothing to him personal. And again, I'd like to think in fantasy football, I'm allowed to have that opinion. We are the GMs of our own team, so I can make that decision, and I'm cool with that. I would prefer DK Metcalf 1,000 out of 1,000 times here. And in terms of overall projections, I have DK Metcalf at about 145 targets. I have Lockett at about 115. I know that's low. I think everything I've seen, you get Tyler Lockett at about 120 targets here. So I'm on the low end here. And again, you're looking at another season from DK Metcalf where he catches 85 or 90 balls. He's going to put up 1,400 yards. He's going to score double-digit touchdowns. And when you look at Lockett, he is the quintessential little brother, right? He'll catch about 75 to 80 passes. He'll put up 1,000 yards, which is good for a wide receiver. He'll average, 11, 12 yards a reception. He'll score 6 or 7 touchdowns, but they're going to be in 2 games. And good luck projecting what games those will be. Tyler Lockett is the guy that you want. He is, if I'm not mistaken, he's a top 5 overall dynasty wide receiver asset. So why, to me, discussing Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, it's not that close. And again, I hope I don't come off like a jerk, but I'd prefer Tyler Lockett, or excuse me, Jesus Christ, I'd prefer DK Metcalf in any and all situations.
Hey, I don't think you do. I mean, that's like you had mentioned. I mean, we're all our own managers and GMs of these teams. And if you don't like Tyler Lockett, for someone who likes Tyler Lockett, that's perfect. You know what I mean? I think that everybody should have their own opinions, because if everybody liked the same players, we can share in the draft.
We can share. I'll take DK and you can take Lockett, and everybody's happy.
There you go.
I think Dan and I can share in a lot of our drafts we do together, but just throw that out there.
Dan, how are you? What do you expect from Metcalf and Lockett, and can Eskridge be anything in this offense this year?
I think Metcalf is going to be the better overall receiver, like more yards, more targets. But I love the blow up games. I know it's hard to predict when you get them from Lockett, but I'm more of a Lockett guy myself, especially where you get them in the draft. You get DK Metcalf in about the late second, early third round, and Tyler Lockett's going a few rounds later than that. So I'll take Lockett all day over DK, which is not very popular, I don't think. And with Eskridge, I don't know how much he sees the field, but he, I don't know. I don't know yet. I don't have an opinion really on Eskridge.
Yeah, he's a little deep there.
Dan, let me ask you real quick, Dan, if I may. So you'd prefer Lockett, and I'm not trying to fight or put you down or anything. Now, you would prefer Lockett over DK just because of like the ADP that's involved there? Is that the biggest reason?
Yeah, I'll take the discount because Metcalf had 1,300 yards last year and Lockett had 1,000. So, that's not. It's kind of close, but I'll take the discount on Lockett any day over paying second, third round for Metcalf when I could get a good running back there too.
Fair enough. Yeah. And I over the years, I've learned it. I learned this playing fantasy baseball, right? If you miss out on a guy or you don't like a guy like that, and I make mistakes all the time. Tyler Lockett is a good wide receiver. And if I make the mistake of not drafting him because of my personal opinion, I always keep in the back of my mind that it's not over. If I ever want to send an offer to get him, you just got to sweet talk the owner. So drafting DK over Lockett doesn't mean Lockett is gone forever on my team. So if I like to, or later on in the season, I could acquire him.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. I agree with that.
All right, Ryan. So what are you expecting from DK, Tyler Lockett, and then Eskridge?
So the question that I've been asking myself in every single draft that I've done so far, and I've done, oh my gosh, I think I've done half a dozen with Dan so far this year. But it's always, which Metcalf are we going to get? I mean, his production is strongly tied to Russ's opportunity to just let the ball fly as he pleases, like he was in the first half of the year. First half of the year, he was at 21 points per game in PPR, and then he only averaged 12.5 in the back half, but he still ran the third most routes in the league, was still second in yards last year, and he leads the league in end zone targets since coming into the league. So his ceiling is obviously massive, and I feel like everybody knows that, but I feel like that's also where they're drafting him, is at his ceiling. If he can become a bit more consistent with his weekly production, I don't think anybody would be shocked to see him be a top 5 wide receiver this year. But it kind of goes back to the Russ question of if he's going to cook or not, because like I said, that 21 points per game, if that 21 points per game is what we're going to get, then yeah, obviously you love him at the second or third round that you're getting him at. But if you're at 12.5, like he was the back half of last year, you hate him at that position. Like you're wasting a pick in the second or third round to get him. As for Lockett, he's one of the biggest high risk, high reward receivers in fantasy for me. 47% of his fantasy points came in weeks 3, 7, and 17 last year. But he sees over 8 targets a game. He's had 8 or more touchdowns the last 3 years, and Seattle just gave him a huge extension as well. And I had him on a few teams last year, and he's simply one of those guys that you hate to bench, but you're also really nervous to start him from week to week, at least for me, because he's so up and down. With Metcalf always seeing the top corner every week, he's always going to have that week-winning upside and offers enough volume and big play potential to be a wide receiver too, obviously, because he's already done that. But he is really hard to trust. And as for Eskridge, they took him with their first pick in the second round, but he's likely going in to David Moore's spot. And over the last 4 years with Seattle, Moore's averaged 20 catches for 313 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I think Eskridge is a better player, but given the fact that Seattle wants to run the ball more, and they already have the 2 dynamic receivers we just talked about, and not to mention Gerald Everett, we're going to talk about next, it's just difficult for him to have an immediate impact on your fantasy team this year without an injury to either of those top guys.
I like everything that you guys are saying. And for me, this is going to sound a little weird, but I'm just out on both of them on the basis of, or actually all 3 of them. It's kind of ADP just because, Chris had alluded to asking Dan, Metcalf goes too early for me. I'm definitely a hard running back type guy in the second round. And then Tyler Lockett is, like you guys all alluded to, he's a big boomer bust guy. And I hate those types of players because I just can never start them because like I just won't. I sit there and I think like I'm going to take this guy that's going to get me 10 points consistently over a guy who might get me 20 but also could give me 0. So I mean, it loses me weeks sometimes, but I'm more into that consistency than I am that boomer bust type player. But like you'd mentioned, Ryan, let's move on to Gerald Everett here. I put it in here and I feel like it's actually a pretty easy question, maybe not, but do you think we can get a top 10 tight end finish here from Gerald Everett? Chris? I know you don't love tight ends, but
no. And if you could real quick there, Bob from I-80 commented it's not even week 1. Yeah. He said, can you bring that up real quick? So Bob says here, shout out to Bob. It's not even week 1. Anybody can be top 12 except Gerald Everett. It's not going to happen. Now we look at, last year, and even when he was drafted, I believe he was a 2nd-round pick. He failed to live up to the expectations in LA. He did all right in LA. He was kind of he wasn't thought about much because of the other offensive talent they had there. No worries. I feel like Gerald Everett is going to Seattle in almost the same exact situation, right? Cooper Kupp, Woods, Akers. Then you go to Seattle, you got DK, Lockett, and Carson now. So it's almost the same exact situation. And I know the biggest question here is everybody says the same word. He's going to have to fend off Will Dissly. Will Dissly is on the field a ton, and he's not always running routes. He's on the field a ton as an extension of the offensive line because he's a monster blocker. They love that, so he's on the field a lot more. So when it comes to Gerald Everett, I have him finishing better than Will Dissly in terms of offensive production, but both are pretty much, nil. I don't think Will Dissly gets to 30 receptions. I don't think Gerald Everett gets to 40 receptions. I have both guys under 100 total PPR fantasy points. Gerald Everett about 400 yards, 2 or 3 touchdowns. And again, you don't know when you're going to get them. So Gerald Everett to me is better suited for DFS purposes, a punt play week to week when you need a guy, when you don't want to spend up at tight end. In terms of fantasy, he fits the mold for someone like me who punts the position, who fades the position. Last pick of the draft. If it's a 10 team, even 12 team, who's to say Gerald Everett even gets drafted? So that's a waiver wire addition. So who knows? So in terms of Gerald Everett, don't know the guy, don't hate him, don't love him, but I'm out on Gerald Everett in terms of a tight end because there are so many damn young, talented tight ends that I'd rather have this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising to think that this division is just full of kind of like 3 meh tight ends, and then you get like one of the best. I just think it's kind of funny. But
yeah,
Dan, how do you feel about Gerald Everett this year? Think he can get into that top 10 range?
I don't know if he quite makes top 10, but he's going on Sleeper as the tight end 24, and like rookie Pat Freiermuth is going ahead of him and people like that. So if you could get him that late and at tight end 24, you have to take him there. He's going to get good production. They like him down there. They said he looks really good. I think they're going to get him involved a lot. He might not get tight end 10, but he's going to be 11 or 12 somewhere in there.
All right, I like it. Ryan?
Yeah, like Dana said, Carroll's already spoken very highly of him. He actually stated that he's the best receiver tight end combo that he's ever had in Seattle. And if you don't remember, Jimmy Graham was there with Pete, and he actually holds a tight end or the team tight end record for yards and touchdowns in a season. And they do have 144 targets that left from last season. And Seattle does love throwing to the tight ends in the end zone. The past 5 years, they've had 46 total touchdowns go to the tight ends. Only 3 tight ends had more than 8 touchdowns last season. So if Everett can get 6 or 7 of the 8 to 10 that Seattle typically gives to his tight ends, he can be a top 12 option just purely based off a touchdown upside if he can get the touchdown that they usually give out.
All right, I like it. Isn't it kind of surprising they throw to the tight end that much when you have a monster that's DK Metcalf on the outside? Kind of seems a little weird, but
they feed him too. Just look at the touchdowns.
Yeah, right. I guess. I mean, when you're putting 40 up,
yeah.
When you're putting 40 up, I guess 8 isn't really that many.
Like I said, DK leads the league in end zone targets. Leads the whole league in end zone targets since he got in the league. So I mean, they are targeting him in the end zone, but it is weird that they throw to the tight ends so often in the end zone. But that's part of the reason why Everett's got so much sleeper appeal right now.
That's a great stat, Ryan. Where did you find? Where'd you find that stat, Ryan, that he leads? Because I just love to kind of look around and just look at the top 10 or even the top 20.
I will. I'll get back to you on that because
Sure.
I have it in my notes here, but I don't have it right here in front of me. So.
Got it.
All right, let's move on to the Arizona Cardinals here. Obviously, we got Kyler Murray at the helm. Do we think he can get to the QB1 this year, or do we think he's just going to kind of be where he's been, I think, about around QB3? Ryan, start us off.
I think he stays around that QB2-3 range for me. Weeks 1 through 10 before his shoulder surgery, he was averaging 9 carries, 67 yards, and a touchdown per game. Would you love to see that for your quarterbacks? However, from week 11 through 13, he only had 15 attempts for 61 yards total. And he had only 3 games with less than 30 pass attempts, but he also had 5 games with less than 200 passing yards. So I think he easily could have been even better than he was last year, and his rushing keeps his floor extremely high. So barring injury, I think he's locked into that top 3 with his upgrade and weapons that he's got and his rushing ability. But I don't think he gets past Allen or Mahomes for a season long as long as they're both healthy.
All right, Dan.
If he runs the ball more this year, I could definitely see him being in the conversation for QB1. But as long as Mahomes and Allen are up there, I have a hard time putting Kyler over both of them too. He's great. He's got good weapons, but those other two are just too good.
All right, Chris.
Yeah, I'm with the consensus so far. I love Kyle Allen. He's a great talent. He looks to be a good man on and off the field here. But when it comes to Kyler Murray, what I like actually is I don't know. I'm just reading this for the first time though. Arizona last year, a heavy passing volume there. Same could be said for Buffalo. I mean, that what they do in Buffalo is insane in terms of passing work here. But Arizona, they led the pace of play the last 2 seasons, and what gets you with Kyler Murray is the rushing. He had 11 touchdowns last season on the ground, and what's shocking to me is that didn't even lead the league in quarterbacks. I think Cam Newton had 12 or something crazy nonsense. I lost a Jeopardy question on that one, so I remembered it and I bring it up whenever I can. But no, I'm with you. Kyler Murray hit a very formidable fantasy quarterback. He is a top 5 talent. He's a top 3 guy, but it's Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Those two are interchangeable. And then you have Kyler Murray bringing up the rear at 3 right there. So could he get to 1? Well, anything is possible. We don't know how, things are going to break or the bounces of the ball here. But if everything goes to plan, which it rarely does, so I don't even know why I'm saying this, Kyler Murray will stay right there. To be fair, I have him 4th in my rankings. I prefer.
Uh-oh. We got a freezer. I'm going to say he prefers Dak Prescott. That's my guess.
Dak?
But let's just roll here. Ryan, let's move on to the running backs real quick. Do we get Chase Edmonds or James Conner, who finishes higher in PPR?
I think it's James Conner, actually. He gets an O-line upgrade from the Steelers. According to PFF, they were 17th ranked team last year, and Cardinals finished 12th in their season-ending rankings last year, and they just added Rodney Hudson, who should help if he can return to his 2017, 2019 form. Conner is 26, and he hasn't been an elite option since 2018, but he's likely to see the early down work and the goal line work, and he can be on the field in your passing situation, so he doesn't have to come off the field all the time. My question is just how effective he can still be at this point, man. He was 80th in fantasy points per opportunity last year, only averaged 4.3 yards per carry and only 2 yards after contact. Being on a more explosive team that ran the 3rd most plays in the league last year should provide plenty of opportunity. If he can capitalize, I see his ceiling as a low end RB2 just because of his overall effectiveness, and his floor is basically unstartable, short of a bye week fill in. With the signing of Conner, though, it's clear that Edmonds isn't viewed as much more than a change of pace style of back for this offense. He does have some flex appeal in PPR leagues because he is going to catch some balls, but other than injury to Conner, I don't see him getting enough touches to be much more than that. And it wouldn't shock me to see Rondale Moore get some gadget type touches as well, which could also hurt his production. So it's Connor for me due to his touchdown potential and his ability to play all 3 downs when he's healthy.
All right, I like it. I feel like the touchdown stuff is going to be a little scary with Kyler's rushing ability, but I can see the path for sure because I do like to run it right up the middle, and Connor's that guy, not Chase Edmonds. Dan, how do you feel, Connor or Chase Edmonds, who finishes higher in PPR?
Oh God,
it's a tough one.
I think I'm going to give the nod to Edmonds here. I'm out on both guys, so I don't really have much of an opinion with these two. But if I had to pick, gun to my head, it's going to be Chase Edmonds. He's had the opportunity before, and there's been a few games where he just absolutely exploded and had huge fantasy days, and I'm more sold on him than Connor. I love Connor. I love his story and everything, but yeah, give me Chase Edmonds.
All right. Let's move on to the wide receivers, guys. So obviously we got DeAndre Hopkins as wide receiver 1, probably a top 10 finish again, probably top 5. Let's go with this question. Who is the wide receiver 2 this year to own in Arizona? Ryan.
I think it's Rondale Moore, to be honest with you. AJ Green looked completely and utterly washed last season. He hasn't been an elite option since 2017. Had less than half of his targets last year. And if you look deeper, I mean, it's even worse than what I actually thought it was. I was actually kind of hypothetically sick to my stomach looking at his stats. I mean, he was 93rd in cushion rate, 97th in target separation, 103rd in fantasy points per route, 107th in fantasy points per target, and 220th in expected points added per play. Not to mention how often he's injured. I'm just not expecting much at 32. Rondale Moore, on the other hand, he should see plenty of run as a rookie, regardless of his initial place on the depth chart, because Arizona does run the most 4 wide receiver sets in the NFL. Super quick and athletic, while also being shifty in the open field. He's going to create yards after the catch. And Cliff Kingsbury has already talked about how excited he is to get plays drawn up for him to get the ball in space. So I actually see his ceiling as a Cooper Kupp style player throughout his career, especially in this offense. I loved his landing spot, so that's kind of where I went with him. I wouldn't be surprised to see him be second on the team in targets right out of the gate and score a handful of touchdowns. I think he finishes closer to a wide receiver 3 this season, but he does have wide receiver 2 upside if he sees enough targets. And then from here on out after this year, I think he's got a safe wide receiver 2 floor.
All right, the Christian Kirk disrespect there, but we'll move on. Dan, who do you have as a wide receiver 2 in Arizona?
I'm going to agree with Ryan that it's probably going to be Rondale Moore. AJ Green, it kills me to say he's pretty much washed up at this point in his career. He might be a good decoy for them guys, but that's just about all he's going to be good for, I think. I think Rondale Moore could finish as a wide receiver 2 this year.
All right, Chris, welcome back. Lost you for a minute. We're talking about.
Yeah, thank you. I shared earlier. I mean, it was a private conversation. Didn't say anything wild, but I shared screenshots of the radar because I had a Special Olympics softball game coming up today, and the storms that are moving through here have been nasty. You know, when you look at the radar, it's like green is just rain, but then you get the pink and the red. Like that's bad news. That's like tornado siren, and they're moving through again here. So I apologize for the Wi-Fi cutting out. It's embarrassing. It's not ideal, but here we are. In terms of the Arizona wide receiver. Yeah, it's going right to you boys in Buffalo here. So when you talk about the Arizona wide receivers, D-Hop, number 1, that's not even in question. And when you look at AJ Green in terms of AJ Green versus Rondale Moore. Now, personally, I've always had a thing for AJ Green. I have it. It's hanging in my office here. It's a rookie patch rookie jersey autograph card with AJ Green and Julio Jones, same card. It's one of my prized possessions. So I've always had a thing for AJ, and I will continue to. But in this case, I would prefer Rondale Moore. And you know why? I'm just being lumped in with everybody else on social media. He's a new shiny thing, right? Comes from Purdue. He's tiny, but oh well, he's built like a brute, right? He's huge, he's quick, he's shifty, and that's what we want. And anytime I compare 2 players, same team or not, even different sports, I always ask myself, have we seen that that said athlete's best season as a professional football player or professional athlete in general. With AJ Green, absolutely. His best days were in Cincinnati. Those days are never coming back. So he's just kind of I don't want to say that AJ Green is just there, but we've seen the best of AJ Green. So give me someone that we've yet to see. The upside, is off the charts. You can't quantify it right now because Rondale Moore hasn't played in a professional football game yet. So I'd prefer Rondale Moore. And if you look at their ADPs, I would think that Rondale Moore is just a tad higher, but dare I say they're almost probably the same, not having the information in front of me here. AJ Green will serve a purpose in real life football, and he'll serve a purpose for our football teams. But when you get in those 8 to 10 rounds, it's okay to take a risk, take a shot. And I want all the upside that I can handle with Rondale Moore this coming year and long term.
Man, you guys are just hating on Christian Kirk. It kind of hurts me a little bit.
Yeah, no, the guy we need to hate on is Andy Isabella. He's gone. What did he do? Yeah. He had one game last season, and not to be that guy throw it in your face, but he was mentioned in the whatever week that was in my DFS article. But Andy Isabella is a goner, probably practice squad cut. And Christian Kirk he had a ton of time to kind of step up and do something. Last year was the season where he could have, came about all the stuff and they wouldn't have had to go get AJ Green. So Christian Kirk, he'll serve a purpose too. It's just kind of a bench spot, just in case bye weeks or God forbid injuries here. But yeah, Christian Kirk and Andy Isabella aren't even really on my radar.
So before we move on to the super exciting tight end position in Arizona, to answer your question, Chris, in a dynasty startup ADP in June, DLF, AJ Green is wide receiver 92. Just guess how high Rondale Moore is.
Dynasty, you said? Dynasty startup? I'm going to say early to mid-30s.
Not that high. 47. But yeah. Okay. So Rondale Moore is a lot higher than AJ Green, at least in Dynasty. That's all that I have pulled up. Otherwise, I would go further. But all right, like I had said, the super exciting tight end position here. Ryan, anything with Max Williams or just out?
So 66 targets last year total for tight ends. Kingsbury's never had a tight end finish higher than 24 in PPR scoring. So outside of a bye week desperation scenario, no.
Dan?
No.
Figured. And we know how Chris hates tight ends, but we'll ask. Chris?
Yeah, no. If they have 5 tight ends on their depth chart right now: Max Williams, Daryl Daniels, Ian Bunting, Kerry Angeline, which they look like they drafted him or undrafted free agent, and then Bernard Sikiovitz. So I don't know who half these people are. I've heard of Ian Bunting. Max Williams was made me some money playing college DFS years ago, but no, thank you.
Yeah, Arizona is not a place that you want to draft a tight end, and never have, and probably never will.
If I may say, though, in terms of DFS formats and even seasonal formats, Arizona has always been a team where you start the opposing tight end against Arizona. They've been god-awful against tight ends for probably going on 5 or 6 seasons now.
So are the Bills, so there's another one, too. I'll give you a quote in there. If the tight end's playing the Bills or Arizona, start them.
Got it.
Fair.
Absolutely.
There we go. Yep. Let's move on to the San Francisco 49ers, who have a new shiny toy at quarterback, or do they? Trey Lance is obviously drafted. Who is the top, or who starts week 1? Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo, and who finishes better fantasy-wise? Chris.
Well, to be honest with you, again, as I said earlier in the broadcast, it's the end of June. It's the midsummer. I like to play it safe.
It's early.
I'd like to play it safe. But realistically, I think Jimmy G starts the first game, maybe the second game. I could see a case with Jimmy G where if you remember, I think it was Baker Mayfield, drafted first overall. He didn't start the first few games. And then I believe it was a Monday Night Football game. Cleveland was just getting hammered, and they put Baker in the middle of the game, and they didn't look back with him. I see a case here, same thing with Lance. Everything I've seen from Trey so far in camp and doing all the readings on him, he looks phenomenal. Even not too long, I'm sure you guys have seen it too, where he's just flicking these passes, and they're going like 40 or 50 yards in a bucket into the back of the end zone or in the front of the end zone here, and his throwing motion looks effortless, right? You have these big arms come down, and when he throws it, it's just so quick. It's like a snap, and bam, it's 40, 50 yards, in the air down the field here, which I like because it doesn't look like there's a ton of torque on Trey Lance's elbow, his shoulder. That has long-term ramifications here, so I like that. I fully expect Trey Lance to be their starting quarterback sometime this year. It's just, when is it going to happen? Again, Jimmy G being there, Trey Lance being drafted there, I don't think that has any bearing on what we're doing in drafts in terms of Trey Lance. I'd like to think the majority of ADPs and people drafting, they're taking Trey Lance over Jimmy Garoppolo anyway. So to be realistic here, it doesn't matter when Trey Lance starts or when he doesn't start, because it's going to happen, and he's being drafted as such here. So I'm all in on Trey Lance long term, obviously, seeing how he was just drafted 2 months ago.
I like it. Dan? Dan's gone. Ryan?
So for fantasy purposes, I think the obvious answer is that we want Lance to start. His rushing ability gives him a super high floor. His upside is pretty dramatic, especially compared to Jimmy Garoppolo's. RG3 was a QB4 as a rookie under Shanahan, and Lance has that same type of skill set. But Jimmy has apparently looked good so far this offseason, and I truly believe that they want Jimmy to be the starter this year, or else they would have moved off of him earlier in the offseason. Shanahan has come out and said it's going to take a lot for Lance to take the job. But Jimmy has missed 25 out of a possible 57 starts, and in his only full year as a starter in 2019, Garoppolo just wasn't very good. If you take away his 2 games they played against the Cardinals, who debatably had the worst passing defense in the league that year, he averaged 231 yards, 20 total touchdowns, and 18 total turnovers, with the 4th highest adjusted interception rate, which, if it's your interceptions that takes away tipped passes, so it takes the receiver out of the equation. And that was 4th most in the league of QBs that played at least 10 games. And I don't know if you guys remember or not, but Garoppolo was actually benched for 6 straight quarters in the playoffs that year. So long story short, if everyone is healthy, I think Jimmy starts week 1 and stays the starter until he gets hurt, which almost seems like a foregone conclusion, or it's just a lost season for the Niners if they suffer a rash of injuries like they did last year.
Yeah, I mean, like Chris had alluded to earlier, I think everybody's clamoring to get Trey in there because he just looks effortless in his throwing motion. He has a lot of that Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Deshaun Watson, like that just effortless throwing motion that is a high upside. The question just becomes is when is his time to come in?
Soon.
So hopefully. Let's move on here to the 49ers backfield. So this is going to be probably a running back by committee. Let's plant our early flags here. Who do we have, or who do we want to own, I guess, out of this backfield at the moment for 2021? Ryan, start us off. You have obviously Raheem Mostert, Trey Sermon, Elijah Mitchell, Wayne Gallman, and JaMychal Hasty. No need to go over all of them. Just who do you think, or maybe 2 of them that you think are the top 2 or something? Go ahead, Ryan.
So I think Mostert is the lead back. He knows the offense better than any of the other backs, especially with it being such a complex system to learn. And they drafted Trey Sermon, obviously in the 3rd round, 2nd round, 3rd round. Third round. And I think Sermon is Mostert's backup as long as Mostert stays healthy, which isn't a guarantee. But Jeff Wilson's already had his meniscus torn and needed surgery, so he's already out. I actually don't think he sees the field again outside of injuries, especially if Sermon and Elijah Mitchell can both pick up the offense. But I actually just wrote out who I think, and Gallman's in a 1-year deal with no guarantees, and he was signed before they drafted Sermon and Mitchell. So I actually think he ends up being cut if Sermon and Mitchell are able to pick up the offense fast enough. I just put their depth chart for week 1. In my opinion, I think it's Mostert, Sermon, Mitchell followed with Hasty, and then Wilson starting the year on the pup list.
All right, Chris.
Yeah, this one's weird, but it's going to take a lot to kind of wade through this, and I'm not going to waste our time here tonight with it. But I think that
there's a lot there. It really could be a whole episode.
Absolutely. I mean, I've always liked Mostert. I'm with Ryan. He's probably going to be the lead back for a short period of time. I love the idea of the combo of Trey Sermon and Elijah Mitchell. Before the draft, Trey Sermon was an Ohio State running back. Nobody was really paying attention to him. He was kind of like an afterthought in dynasty circles, right? I don't want to say afterthought, but with the crop of running backs and the crop of wide receivers in this draft class, Trey Sermon actually was an afterthought. But then when he was drafted, that made everything, roses. It made everything disappear. And then Jeff Wilson is out for 4 to 6 months with a knee injury here. And the mad dash, it's like the gold rush, perfect time for it, being in San Francisco. The gold rush was on to go and get Trey Sermon. And it is what it is. How much did you pay for him? Was it cheap? Was it expensive? And who knows? But Trey Sermon will pay off for you long term. But one guy I want to mention that nobody ever really cares about, it's Wayne Gallman. He was fantastic when he was with New York, and he's going to have a role here in San Francisco. It's not going to be a ton, but he's going to make for, like 100 carries, maybe, given the fact that he's in San Francisco with 17 other running backs, maybe not. But I don't want to dismiss Wayne Gallman. He's a good running back. He plays with his heart and soul, another one of those guys, and he gives you those hard-earned yards. He'll get you a first down when you need it on 3rd and 3 or 4th and 2, something like that. So you can trust Wayne Gallman. So again, because we all know it's nothing sexy. Again, we could talk about this all day. Mostert, Trey Sermon, Elijah Mitchell. Those are the ones people are talking about. I don't want to, run that into the ground, but just keep an eye on Wayne Gallman. You could do worse when you're, punting or late round running back selections.
For sure. I love that take. Dan?
It's Raheem Mostert for me until he gets injured, or because when he's on the field, they tend to go to him all the time. And I think, barring an injury, I think Mostert is the guy. But next on the depth chart has to be Trey Sermon. He's a beast, and I think he'll even have a role without a Mostert injury. So I think it's them two, and then if both of them get hurt, it's Gallman time for sure. I'm here for Wayne Gallman over Elijah Mitchell and JaMychal Hasty for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of see what they did. I mean, they obviously drafted Sermon, but adding Gallman, it's like they got two kind of taller backs, and then they kind of went with they have like an even split of these two guys who are very similar. I feel like Trey Sermon and Wayne Gallman are very similarly built. They're kind of the same style runners. And then you have like Mostert, Mitchell, and Hasty, who are all these little bit faster, kind of more agile guys. So I don't know. I mean, like Chris had said, this could be a whole episode. So we have 3 Mosterts here from these 3 guys. So
if anybody can make a committee work, though, it's Kyle Shanahan. He's known for doing this. He's a mastermind with running backs, and I want shares of almost any 49er running back I can get.
Yeah, I mean, any of these 4 could end up being viable at some point in the year. So let's move on to their wide receivers. Who do we think finishes as their wide receiver 1 this year? Is it Debo or Brandon Ayuk? Dan?
I'm going to say Brandon Ayuk. I think he leads the team in targets this year, even with Kittle back. I think he showed enough last year at the end of the year that he can be a bona fide number 1 in that offense. Even with Kittle there, I'll say that he's going to be the wide receiver 1.
Bonus question. Do you think he can be top 15 in wide receivers overall? Or is that too rich? You think he's more of a low-end wide receiver 2?
I could see him finishing at 15, to be completely honest with you. I could see a wide receiver 2 finish for him. Top 15.
All right, Chris. Debo or Brandon?
It's Brandon Ayuk, and I'm not thinking twice. And again, when you're talking about both guys, it's kind of personal preference. I have Debo for about 112 targets. I have Ayuk at about 115 targets, and I have Kittle at about 120 ish targets. So again, sliding scale, give me a margin of error in between 2 or 3, and we're good here. So, Kittle, Ayuk, and Debo to me. And you know what? I've had this, it's not an argument, but I've had this discussion with some of my close personal friends, guys who have been friends since we were little kids. And everybody, I've seen the same thing on Twitter here. Oh, you want to go Ayuk, you want to get Kittle, that's fine. You're going to give me Debo Samuel for nothing, and I'll take that. And like I'm some sort of loser, or I don't know what I'm doing. I hate that condescending behavior when you're trying to compare or have a spirited discussion about 2 wide receivers here. Debo is fantastic in his own right. Another case of wide receivers kind of like LA, but just a little bit less than, where Debo and Ayuk might wind up with identical stat lines, 75 to 80 catches, 900 yards apiece, 5 or 6 touchdowns apiece, and we go from there. So both guys are very much in play in terms of when you're drafting or if you want to trade. So it gets so close, kind of like I said with LA, it comes to personal preference. I would prefer Brandon Ayuk a little bit more, just for the standard kind of things. He's younger, he looks more agile. And I'm not saying, anything bad about Debo, but I just would prefer Ayuk compared to what we saw last season. So give me Ayuk. And again, I think this offense, let's cross our fingers that we get a full season from George Kittle. The NFL is just better when George Kittle is active and throwing his hair around, wearing championship belts, being a wild man. So if we can get a full season from George Kittle, he's the target to get in San Francisco. And then I would grab Ayuk. So kind of like a 1A, 1B thing for me in San Francisco.
Could you imagine if San Francisco could stay healthy in general? Look, you have a quarterback who misses a ton of time, running backs miss a ton of time, wide receivers.
They would have won a Super Bowl already.
It's just crazy. Ryan, all right, who you taking, Debo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk?
All right, so full disclosure, and I hate doing this, but I have a lot to say about these 2 guys just from stuff. A lot to say. All right.
We got a time limit here, Ryan.
I know. I think Brandon Ayuk is a wide receiver 1 on the team moving forward. Debo has a pretty long list of injuries dating back to his college days, and his style of play doesn't really help those matters. When he's healthy, he's a yak monster, but he seeks out contact and plays, honestly, like a running back more than a wide receiver. Ayuk was extremely productive last season, and I expect him to be the top performing wide receiver in fantasy for the Niners. But there's a few problems that I do want to point out that might get me killed on Twitter if enough people are actually listening. So,
there's only 1 watching right now, so you're good. 2.
Oh, see? Number 1, San Fran only averages 510 pass attempts over the last 3 years. So since Kyle Shanahan's gotten there, which is 8th fewest in the league, they've thrown to their wide receivers the 3rd fewest amounts over those last 3 years with 771 targets, which is just over 16 a game. With Kittle in the lineup, that number dips down to 14.6 per game, which trails only the Ravens in the league. And these 3 have only played 4 games together, so I know it's a small sample size due to injuries. But in those games, Debo averages 5.5 targets, Ayuk is 5.3, and Kittle averages 10. Debo for his career averages are 9 touches and 93 yards without Kittle, 5 touches and 56 yards with him. Ayuk has played 6 games with Kittle, 6 games without him. With him, he's averaged 5.5 targets and 58 yards, and without, he's at 10.5 targets with just under 80 yards. This offense clearly runs through Kittle when he's on the field, and those numbers to me speak volumes. A healthy Kittle plus the fact that no receiver has ever finished higher than 31st in PPR scoring under Shanahan, and the possibility of Trey Lance coming in being a more mobile rookie quarterback at some point. I'm just a tad skeptical than everybody having Ayuk and Debo in the top 15-ish range, because I do love both talents, but the numbers point to a low end wide receiver 2, high end wide receiver 3 finish for both. But the upside is certainly there if things can fall their way, and if Kittle maybe takes a step back in terms of his just domination of targets when they're all on the field.
I like it. That's a lot of good information there, Ryan.
Absolutely.
I like it all. And I'm with you. I mean, I know that you said it might get you hurt and killed on Twitter, but if they come, just like tag me, I'll come. So I agree. I'm just a little worried. I just don't know if I can see the volume there when Kittle's healthy for all 3 of these guys. But let's move on to that George Kittle take. Can George Kittle return to the form that he was, or do we think this injury we see a step back from him? Ryan, start us off.
So I think I said plenty enough in the last question. He's averaged at least 15 fantasy points in PPR per game over each of the last 3 seasons. him and Kelsey are the only two that have done it over those last 3 years. He's my tight end 3, and that's only because he has better receiving competition for targets in a murkier QB situation than Kelsey and Waller.
What if the stuff that I saw on Twitter today, what if Derek Carr gets Devontae Adams?
That makes things a little interesting.
Wow.
That makes things a tad interesting.
All right, Chris. George Kittle, how do we think?
Yeah, I'm all in on George Kittle again. So I keep referencing things that we hopefully all saw together, not in unison, but just give or take that way. The tight ends, Kelsey and Kittle, they had their yearly tight end kind of. Excuse me, the phone was going off. They have their yearly kind of tight end retreat, and it was in Nashville, and they're all on the field. We saw Travis Kelsey working with Kyle Pitts, and then we saw Kittle was like the spokesman for it. He looks lean. He looks cut up. He looks ready to roll. His hair is like a man bun. I mean, when you have that kind of Kittle in front of you, you're destined for big things here. And one thing I just read that it was shocking to me, Kittle's never cleared 5 or more touchdowns in a season in his NFL career. But again, I love from Iowa. He works a lot with TJ Hawkinson here in Detroit. So a healthy George Kittle, which I fully expect to happen this year, 85 receptions, over 1,000 yards. Hopefully he gets over that 5, touchdown hump here and gets 7 or 8, and that would be fantastic. So another guy I'm all in on. And again, I don't care what the ADP is. As I told you, I wait and I punt. So I will never have George Kittle on my team. I never have, and I probably never will, but I can watch him from afar and appreciate what he does.
Yeah, I mean, I never am able to draft George Kittle. I do have one. I might have 2 shares. I don't really know. I know I have 1, and it just came in a trade last year when he got injured. Someone needed a running back. I moved Josh Jacobs and some parts and pieces around and ended up with Kittle back. So I'm pretty excited this year. So I hope Kittle returns to form because I'm pretty amped for that. But
yeah,
Dan, how do you feel on George Kittle this year?
He's a ball hog. He's going to get a lot of targets, a lot of yards. He's a freak. He's just an absolute animal, and I think he's going to finish as the tight end 1 this year.
Oh,
wow!
I do.
Gonna unseat Kelsey. Ooh,
that's real spicy. Considering Kelsey's been tight end 1 for I don't know,
17 years in a row. I think.
I would say it's like forever.
I think Kittle takes over this year. I think it's his year.
All right. I mean, that cliff has to come for Kelsey eventually, right? I mean, he's getting there. I could see it. I mean, Kittle definitely has a path there if he continues to see the numbers like Ryan had said. I mean, 10, 15 targets a game. I mean, that's if he can turn it into, like Chris had said, he gets 7, 8 touchdowns, definitely a possibility.
That's not tight end numbers. Those are wide receiver numbers, too. So
absolutely.
You're getting a wide receiver at a tight end position. So I'll take that in a wasteland of a position.
We got 5 of them now because we're going to throw in Chris's TJ Hawkinson. But, you got you got Waller, Kelsey, Kittle, Pitts, and Hawk.
Mark Andrews. You gotta mention Logan Thomas is up there for. I mean, real quick, if we got time, my tight end rankings are as follows: Kelsey, Kittle, Waller, TJ, Mark, Pitts, Logan, Dallas Goedert, Robert Tonyan, and then Font rounds out my top 10.
I like it. All right, guys, let's wrap this episode up. Ryan, we'll start with you. Just let everybody know where they can find you on Twitter and what you got going on real quick.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Mackey_FFB. Yards Per just posted an article that I wrote about redraft and keeper strategies. So if you guys go check that out, I really appreciate it. I want to thank Detroit BC and Park over here for joining us tonight and having a great episode.
I agree. To extend the thanks to our 2 guests. It is great to have you guys on. It was a pleasure. And Chris, why don't you start us off where they can find you on Twitter and what you have going on?
Sure, easy peasy. You can find me at Detroit Beastie. I'm with the Undroppables, heading up what they want to do with DFS. They brought me on there. And as it stands right now, I'm not working on much in terms of written content. Just do some broadcasting here and there. This is the time where, June and July, I like to lay low, right? Just do a ton of notes, outlines, ideas and such. So then when the football season comes, I am in no shortage of ideas and everything. Plus, you see all these people on social media that are they're going just all out right right now. And then when the first month or two of the season, they're going to fade away. They're going to burn out. The timeline of what we're doing here is just as important as the content. So take care of yourself. If you need a day to disconnect and you need a day to kind of step away and take for yourself, that's fine. This world still spins. Twitter will still be there, and you can come and go as you please. So take it easy.
Quality over quantity, Chris.
Bingo.
I totally agree. I mean, right now I've taken a couple days off. It's a lot. I mean, right now everybody's talking about the same stuff back and forth, and
I know.
Fantasy football Twitter is for June and July gets a little dicey. But all right, Dan, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you on Twitter and what you got going on?
Yeah, you can find me at ParkFFB on Twitter, and doing a lot of good work over at Yards Per Fantasy there. We're an up-and-coming team. We're a good team. We have a lot of different opinions. I'm going to be laying out my top 10 rankings for running backs, quarterbacks, wide receivers, all my rankings that I'm going to have. And come check us out. It's a good up-and-coming platform that we got rolling here at Yards Per. I really like it, and I enjoyed my time here. Thank you guys again for having me. Hopefully we can run it back again.
Oh, for sure. You're both welcome anytime.
Right.
Chris, I know you don't want to reach out, but if you do, go ahead. I won't be offended.
Now I will.
Trust me.
I mean, you made a mistake. You had me on. Now I'm just going to be bugging you, right?
Yeah,
So.
no, it's fine.
Can you be on the broadcast? Can I borrow $20? I don't know, but I'm going to be messaging you all the time.
I'll Venmo you. Yeah, just hit me with the Venmo.
Perfect.
Whatever you need.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Need that Starbucks or whatever? Just let me know. I'll send it over.
It'll go right to FanDuel, but here we go.
Yeah, whatever. Same difference. But yeah, that's the show for today, guys. And until next week, everybody take care.